Hello everyone, how's it going? Welcome to my Wild Rift tier list for patch 4.0b. In this video, we're going to be going through all the changes that I've made to my tier list. I've also added a few new champions to some different roles that were highly requested on my last video. And we're going to be talking about all the changes that happen in patch 4.0b and what I think of the changes so far whilst playing the patch. And also, we got Zeri as well, which I'll be talking about a little bit later on. Timestamps are in the description for every single role in the game. I'm going to go through every single role, let you know my thoughts, and we'll get right into it. First up, let's talk about the Baron lane. Not much has changed in the Baron lane at all. There wasn't really that many changes to that many champions. The big change was the one to Camille. I still think Camille is still fairly strong. I still think she offers a lot. I've been playing Camille a little bit as well. I've been playing a little bit of solo lane, and Camille still offers the same as what she has always offered. She's still super flexible. She can split push. She can join team fights. She's very mobile, and she still does a lot. Obviously, her nerfs affect her more in the jungle than the solo lane. Her healing went down a little bit, but the big one was the monster modification on her second ability did get nerfed, which kind of nerfed her jungle clear quite a bit. So she doesn't clear the jungle as fast as what she did before. But in terms of Baron lane, she is still very strong. All the other S+ tier champions are still the same as before. I'll quickly go through all of them, why I put them all in S+ tier. Wukong, just a very easy, very safe champion to play in the Baron lane. Another very flexible champion, has a lot of healing, can join team fights, can split push. He just offers a lot for the whole team, and he's a great champion to pick up. Renekton, because of his early game power, you can go Conqueror or Kraken Slayer, one of the two are totally fine. It's not a problem with that. Really great champion to play, very easy to play as well. Again, can join team fights, again can split push, one of the two. Akali, late game beast, has a lot of scaling in the late game. Early game she does struggle a bit against some of the bruisers. Some of these matchups are very difficult for Akali in the early game, but all you need to do for Akali is just play passive in the early game. Once you play passive, then you can easily scale up into the mid and late game, and you can be very strong. So Akali is still very good. Jax and Fiora, two of the best split pushing champions in the game, both scale insanely well. Fiora has a little bit more early game power than Jax. Jax can still do totally fine though in the early game, but once both these two champions get their whole breaker, once they get the the Trinity Force, Blade Rune King, anything like that, both of these two champions are absolutely unkillable in the side lane, and they're both very strong, so definitely recommend to pick them up. Jay still has the same pressures what he always has during laning phase, having access to 6 abilities in the early game. He's just very powerful. Electrocute's still really strong on him as well to make full advantage of them early abilities and early game pressure. And he still scales pretty well into the middle lane game as well. Another champion that you can go Hullbreaker if you feel like it. If not, then you can go for like lethality with like Ghost Blade, Serrated Grudge, Black Cleaver, items like that. Both are completely fine. Aatrox, even after nerf a couple of patches ago, still really strong. Still has a lot of healing, still has great team fight pressure. Can't really split push and can't really win 1v1s that well, but when you group with Aatrox, when you can hit the sweet spot on your abilities, when you can use your ultimate and get all that mobility, get that healing, then he becomes really difficult to kill. Even when you have anti-heal, he still becomes very difficult to kill. Garen, super easy to play, super safe champion, very strong, still does a lot of damage as well, especially with his ultimate, with his true damage, and Camille I already spoke about. I'm not going to go too much into other details. One other champion, which a lot of you requested in my last video, which I was very surprised about, to be honest with you, but I did finally add YONE into the Baron lane tier list. I don't think YONE is as strong in the Baron lane as what he is in the mid lane. The thing is with YONE is that he's a very late game scaling champion. He doesn't really have a 1 item or 2 item power spike. Normally in the side lane or normally in the mid lane, you like to go Blade to the Rune King. Sometimes in the mid lane, you can go Solari Charge Blade instead. If you're not going to be dueling as much in a 1v1, say you're against a mage in the mid lane, might be better to go for Solari Charge Blade to try and go for the burst damage. But in the Baron lane, when you're against champions like bruisers, especially bruiser tanks like build Divine Sunderer, Blade Rune King is a great item for him. Yes, it delays your crit power spike that you have with Yone, but it's still Blade Rune King is one of the best items for him. It just improves his 1v1 potential in the early game, especially at 1 item power spike, because Yone does struggle a lot against some of the other Baron laners. Yone's like them quick trades, going with a third ability, use your shield with a second ability and trade with your first ability, but you can easily get caught and you can easily get dove on by a Wukong, a Renekton, anyone like this. Like, it's very difficult for Yone sometimes the Baron lane, but he can still work in the Baron lane. That's why I put him in the A+ tier for now. As for that, other than that, not really anything else has changed. in the Baron lane tier list. Every single champion is still pretty much in the same spot. We still have KO at the bottom with Teemo, Trendemir, and Nasus. These 4 champions are still not that great. You got a few other champions just above them, with YONE sitting up there. A couple of S tier champions that can definitely move up into S plus tier. Gragas is very good. You could play in Grass the Undying with like a tanky build with like Rod of Ages if you want to. You can also go Electrocute and go full AP Gragas in the Baron lane. Probably doesn't work out that well. I think full AP Gragas is a lot better in the jungle, but you can still go for that. Zeri is another champion that got buffed a few times. It could be very, very good. Irelia, the reason why I put Irelia down in S tier and not in S plus tier is because Irelia is very, very difficult to play and very, very difficult to master. You really have to understand her abilities to be able to get resets on your first ability, land a stun with your third ability, use the ultimate multiple enemy champions, so you can just keep dashing around and keep being annoying. But if you could play Irelia to a very high standard, then she's very, very strong. Riven, another champion that could definitely move up into S plus tier. I probably should move Riven up into S plus tier, but it just seems so weird having so many champions in the S plus tier. But to be honest, I don't really feel like moving any of them down. Like, all of them are so good. The only one I could maybe move down is Garen, but the reason why I put him in S plus tier is just because how easy he is to play and how much damage he can do when you are ahead and when you can win laning phase. But it's so difficult to move any of these S plus tier champions down, and to move like Riven up. But if I move Riven up, then it becomes more S plus tier champions than S tier champions. But I guess there's no surprise. I think that just shows how, I guess, healthy the meta is at the moment in Baron lane, because there's so many champions that you can play. Obviously, there's some champions that are stronger than others, obviously matchup wise and everything like that as well. But most of the time, you can play quite a few Baron lane champions. Into the jungle, again, not really much has changed. There was a few buffs that happened and a few changes that happened in this patch. One of them was to Jarvan. He got a buff on his second ability, so he's a little bit tankier now. The cooldown went lower and also the base shielding went up, so he's a little bit tankier now. I put him in S tier before. I think he's still in S tier. I don't think he's strong enough to be in S plus tier. But the great thing about Jarvan is that because of how junglers work now, is that some of them go for level 3 ganks, and Jarvan has one of the best level 3 ganks of any jungler because it is flag and drag. Same with like Lee Sin, for example, but Lee Sin is just stronger in the early game. But Jarvan is another champion that you can easily go for like a level 3 gank, go for a 3 camp clear, and then go for that if you want to. It can be very, very good for Jarvan. There was a bit of a change to Morgana as well. Morgana's change was a bit weird. Her third ability got adjusted, so like the cooldown went down, but the base shield went up, the AP ratio went down. But to be honest, none of this really affected jungle Morgana in a way. I think they're trying to lean Morgana more towards the support, but Morgana still has one of the quickest jungle clears of any champion in the game. She's still very, very strong, so the changes to her third ability didn't really do too much to her in the jungle, and she still stays in S tier in my opinion. I had a new champion. I added Zed. This did get nerfed in the most recent patch, but I'm still seeing it pop off quite a lot. I've seen it quite a bit in competitive play. If some of you watched the co-stream with me for the Wild Rift Asia League qualifiers, we saw a lot of Zed, and it really, really popped off. And the reason why Zed is good in the jungle, I mean, he's not like great that he deserves to be S or S plus tier. I think he's like A plus, maybe S. He can maybe be S. I'm not really too sure. But the reason why Zed can work in the jungle is because the one weak thing about Zed is his early game before he reaches level 5. The great thing about jungle is that you can reach level 5 without being put under any pressure. Invading is very, very rare in Wild Rift, and it's such a high risk to go for an invade as a jungler. The reason being is that the map is smaller, so lanes can rotate easier, and it sometimes takes you a lot of time to farm the jungle. And most of the time, you just don't really want to trade that much. You don't really want to flip the game early on, because the Wild Rift is such a short game. If you flip the game off one invade, and if you lose that invade, you pretty much lost. Well, I shouldn't say lose the game, but you're already going to be at such a big deficit, and you're already going to be like 20 steps behind on the enemy jungler. So with Zed, you can just farm up, you can get level 5, you can scale really, really well into the middle late game, and once Zed hits level 5, that's when he becomes really strong, and you can easily look for ganks in the side lane, look for the ultimates, look for your shadow as well to try and jump in onto the back line. So that is why Zed can work in the jungle, and that's why I've added him into tier list. You can go for Electrocute, you can go for Conqueror. Both of them work completely fine. Another change, as I mentioned in the Baron lane, is obviously to Camille. Camille's nerf in the jungle has definitely hit her quite a bit. Her jungle clear speed is nowhere near as fast as what it was before, because most of the time in the jungle, in the Baron lane, you max your second ability, but because the monster modification went down by quite a lot, I think we're down by like 50% or something, or might have been a bit less, I'm not too sure, I can't remember the numbers exactly, but the reason for that is because the jungle clear was very, very fast before, but now it's not as fast, now it's not as good, and that's why Camille, I put her down into A+ tier. I still think she works, I still think she can be okay, but I put her down in the A+ tier. I'll quickly go through the S+ tier champions as well in the jungle. Reason why I think they are obviously up there. Wukong mentioned a little bit in the Baron lane. Wukong is another very safe jungler, and the great thing about Wukong is his team fight potential because of his ultimate Cyclone. And the great thing about junglers is that they always want to group. They always want to group for objectives, and you can always look to try and jump onto the back line. That's why champions like Wukong are very, very strong, because you have easy access to the back line, because you can go invisible with your second ability, leave a Kong behind, bait the entire team, jump onto the back line, use your Cyclone, and then they're CC'd and they're knocked up for a long amount of time. And so that's a pretty big thing for Wukong. Again, Aatrox, same thing, really, really strong in the jungle. You have Ghost Blade, you have Black Cleaver, items like this, especially Ghost Blade as well. Ghost Blade is such a good item now in the jungle because it's very cheap. It gives you a lot of good stats, and it gives you extra movement speed, which Aatrox loves. Again, another champion that you can easily farm up, get to level 5, and his ultimate can bring him so much power into team fights. Lee Sin, on the other hand, a bit more of an early game jungler. You want to try and look for early game trades and early game skirmishes around Scuttle Crab, because this is where Lee Sin can thrive. You can look for early ganks. You don't really want to farm up as much with Lee Sin. You can still farm up to get level 5 if you want to, but you should definitely look for early game ganks for Lee Sin, because that's where his power really lies, because he has so much mobility and has so much single target damage with his abilities, and that's why Lee Sin is very, very strong at the moment. That's why he's S+. Kha'Zix come as no surprise. Kha'Zix is still a very, very strong jungler. Insane burst damage. Very, very fast jungle clear. You have your evolved abilities as well, which make you even stronger, especially your second ability that you have basically AoE slows. You have insane jumps. You have really good single target damage. And yeah, again, another jungler that is very, very strong at the moment. Again, a very safe jungler as well, that you can easily jump away to safety or jump into team fights if you want to. Olaf, just a really annoying champion to deal with, especially during his ultimate unstoppable. Olaf does insane amount of damage. He has a lot of healing. He's such an annoyance to deal with when he uses ultimate, because any CC that goes his way, it doesn't matter. He can't get knocked up, he can't get stunned, he can't get rooted, anything like that. So he's basically running towards your AD carry, well, like me, for example, running towards me like an AD carry, and you can't do enough damage to him as well, because he's still going to be relatively tanky, even though he loses some base stats when he uses his ultimate. So he is really, really annoying. Lilia, one of the few AP champions that are very, very strong at the moment in the jungle. Her wave clear, her jungle clear is fairly decent. You can jungle clear quite quickly. You can also join team fights, and her team fight potential is insane. If you can get like a 5-man sleep or something like that with your ultimate, then she's very, very strong. I really, really like playing her in the jungle as well. She feels super, super good on Wild Rift on mobile, just because of how her controls work. And Diana, I don't think there's much I need to say about Diana. Insane burst damage, insane carry potential. Her ultimate is also insane. I mean, this champion is absolutely disgusting. And most of the time, I ban Diana nowadays. It's either Diana, Kha'Zix, or like Lulu or Newbie, which I'll talk about a bit later in support. Yeah, Kha'Zix, Diana, two very, very strong assassins. That if you want to be more of a carry jungler, then you should definitely give them a try. Some S tier junglers to appreciate, I guess you can say, in a way. Rast Kane, I actually think, is very, very good at the moment. Rast Kane is insanely strong, I think, at the moment, because of how much card control he offers, his healing, his damage potential. Everything about Rast Kane is insanely good. Obviously, Shadow Kane is still down here because it's not as strong, but Rast Kane is very, very strong at the moment. I really like Rast Kane. YONE is still very good in the jungle as well. Shyvana can work in the jungle. The reason why I put her down into S tier is because you can't really AFK farm as much anymore. Riven's another strong jungler. There's plenty of junglers here that you can play. Again, another tier list that you have plenty of champions that you can play, depending on your playstyle, depending on what you feel comfortable with. Onto the mid lane. Nothing changed at all in the mid lane. There's only really one buff to one of the champions, which was to Yasuo. Yasuo got a pretty nice buff to his third ability. He can now dash to the target that he used his third ability on quicker. So before, when you use your third ability on a minion or a champion, you have to wait 8 seconds to use your third ability on that champion or minion again. Now it scales with levels, so now it will go down to, I believe it's like 6 or 5 seconds. So it means you can dash around more often, you can be more mobile. Again, Yasuo though, very, very difficult champion to play. Known as a 0-10 meme for a reason, because a lot of players just pick him up first time because he looks very cool and they like his skill set, and then they proceed to kind of run it down an int. But yeah, I still think he's strong though. He deserves to be an S tier. He doesn't deserve to be anywhere lower. Like I said, the reason why he's not S plus tier is because he is very, very difficult to play. Again, S plus tier has not really changed at all. Again, I'll go through the champions again. Ahri, very, very easy to play. Very good single target damage. If you do miss your abilities though, then you are kind of vulnerable, but very mobile as well. With her ultimate, you can easily carry team fights, easily carry your team with Ahri. Diana, kind of the same as the jungle. You have insane burst potential. The only thing about Diana mid lane is that you kind of struggle in the early game, and again it kind of brings in the same thing that I said about Zed jungle. Diana, when you hit level 5, you're very, very strong. Before level 5, you're a little bit weak, so you have to play a little bit passive in the early game. That's why you can play Diana jungle, for example. In Diana jungle, you can jungle clear quite quickly and you'll be able to easily scale up. Yone mid lane as well. Again, as I mentioned in the Baron lane, I think Yone mid lane has a lot better matchups. I think you have a lot more potential against some of these assassins and mages as Yone. You can look to dash in, you can look to do a lot more damage, and you can also roam a lot easier as well with Yone mid lane. Yone Baron lane, you don't really have a lot of effect on the map in a way. You can't really make make pressure or build up pressure on the map, whereas mid lane you can push out mid lane, which you can do very quickly, fairly quickly on Yone, and then you can look to rotate around the map and try and use Yone's mobility, try and use your shadow with your third ability, and easily gank other lanes whilst you pushed out the mid lane, so you don't actually lose any minions at the same time. Obviously Baron lane is a little bit more difficult because you're further away from all of the action. Casting, a champion that is very, very weak in the early game, but if you scale, you reach level 12, you get your third level in your ultimate, you get a few items, he basically becomes unkillable. Champion that, if you see a Casting on your team, you know that you need to play passive. You know that you can't really gank the Casting lane because he doesn't really have any gank set up, and you know that the mid lane is probably going to lose, might even die a few times. But if you're a Casting, if you know how to play Casting, then you can easily use your third ability, your second ability, and your first ability to farm at range, and then you can just stay on the tower and play safe. Karma, reason I put Karma up here is that she does insane damage. She's really, really good at wave clearing. She's also very good for a team setup as well, with her ultimate and also her shields. Also, she's fairly easy to play at the same time. If you're a support and you do get filled in mid lane, I definitely recommend going for Karma. I think I see a lot of people going for Lux sometimes. I don't think Lux is as good as Karma. But sometimes your support wants Karma, or sometimes Karma gets banned, so that's a little bit difficult. But if you're a support main, if you like playing Karma support, then definitely try out Karma mid lane, because she's definitely a very, very strong champion. You can make a lot more impact, because obviously for Karma mid lane, you get more gold. Yeah, that means you can get more items and everything as well. Akali, same with Baron lane. Definitely struggles in the early game, but once you reach level 5, once you get a few items, you can be very, very strong. Vex is very, very cool. I've been playing a few games of Vex recently. She's a very, very cool champion. She has a lot of poke potential actually in the early game, a lot of good early game trades with her third ability, and you can easily look to again roam around during fights when you push mid lane. She has the same wave clear in the mid lane. Look to roam around, look to try and use your ultimate to try and jump on the enemy backline and try and one shot them with your abilities, and also your fear as well with your passive. Zoe, again, another champion that can roam very, very well. This champion is so slippery, so annoying to deal with. As soon as you get hit by a bubble by Zoe, you're thinking to yourself, oh shit, I'm dead. Happens every single time to me. That's why Zoe gets banned most of the time in ranked, because of how strong she is. So that's why Zoe is up in the S plus tier. A few honorable mentions in the S tier. Champions like Katarina can be really, really good if you know how to play her. Again, she's very difficult to play though, so that's why she's in S tier, but she can definitely move up into S plus tier. Galio is actually a champion I've been playing a lot in ranked recently. I don't know why, but Galio mid lane seems to be absolutely broken. I don't know why, but his champion seems to be absolutely busted. I do so much damage with Galio mid lane. I can easily impact team fights or roam around with my ultimate. I have my taunt, I have my knockout with my third ability. I don't know, this champion just does insane damage. I don't know why, but I'm really liking Galio recently. Lucian mid, if you're an AD carry main, can be very, very good. because you can bully most early game matchups, like casting, for example. You can easily bully in the early game. And there's a few others. Akshan's also pretty good as well. I can maybe move Akshan into S tier. That's probably because I'm always against the one-trick Akshan in the solo queue, who's also very good at Akshan. So that also might be why, but I still think Champion's pretty okay. Other than that, you know, B and A tier, not really too strong, not really too good, in my opinion. Right. Onto duo lane. I think there's only one place that we can really start in the duo lane, and that is talking about Zeri. Let's talk Zeri. Zeri, I think, is fairly strong. I think in the right hands, she could be very, very broken. Her damage, her single target damage output with her bullets, with her auto attacks, does insane amount of damage, like absolutely insane amount of damage. And I think the best build with her at the moment is what I've got here. You know, you can go for like Storm Razor, Hurricane, Infinity Edge. You can even go for Infinity Edge first item and maybe go for something like Bloodthirster if you want to instead as a third item. You can easily go for like a Mortal Reminder and go for a Lost Crit item as well. There's plenty of different builds that you can go with Zeri. I'm actually going to do a Zeri interactions video soon because items like Black Cleaver can also be pretty good for Zeri. If you want to take a look, the videos are not there. If you want to take a look, I did a full guide on Zeri on the website. Link is down in the description, where I explain all the abilities. I explain early game, mid game, all the ability, all the items, the runes, everything like that. So if you want to give that a look, then you can check it out. Link is in the description. But yeah, sorry, going back to Zeri. Again, in the right hands, I think she's very, very good. However, she is one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult, AD carries to play at the moment. The reason being is that your auto attacks are a skill shot, so they can actually be missed. They're not like Lucian or Tristan or Caitlyn, or to be honest, any other champion in the game. Zeri has a very unique auto attack that you basically have to manually aim your auto attacks. You can tap the attack button as well, but your attacks can be blocked. It's kind of like Graves. Your attacks can be blocked by minions, which can kind of cock block you in a way and can be very, very annoying. She, but her third ability is very, very strong because you can easily escape away from ganks because you can jump over walls. Your second ability is really good for poke and getting vision. Your first ability is easily spammable. It does quite a lot of damage in the early game, actually. Zeri is very, very weak, though, in the early game. You need at least 2 or 3 items with Zeri. I think once you get 2 or 3 items, you're pretty much unkillable as long as you hit your ultimate on at least one person, so you can get that overdrive passive on your ultimate to deal that extra spread damage, which kind of gives you like a static shiv for free. Other than that, Zeri, like I said, I think overall she's powerful, but I don't think she's as strong as, like, for example, Lucian, Tristana, Caitlyn, Kai'Sa. I think these champions are a lot easier to play, and I think they're relatively a lot stronger, and I definitely recommend to play them more. I've won multiple games against Zeri. I've also lost games playing Zeri, and I've also won games playing Zeri. There's sometimes that I've got some cool highlights and I've got some cool plays, but at the same time I'm like, okay, maybe this champion is maybe not that good. Maybe the damage output is not really there. But obviously I've been testing out different builds. That also might be why at the same time. But yeah, overall, fairly strong champion. Sits nicely in the S tier. I think that's all I really need to say about her. Caitlyn did receive a buff to her base AD, but I did keep her in the S plus tier. The reason why I keep Caitlyn in the S plus tier is because the great thing about Caitlyn is that she's a very, very safe blind pickable AD carry. And by that, I mean that you can pick Caitlyn first pick if your team doesn't want to first pick anything, and you don't really have any bad matchups in the laning phase. She has the longest range of any AD carry. She still does insane damage in the early game as an AD carry. You can use your ultimate at range. You can kite very easily as well with your traps. You can easily escape ganks. Caitlyn is just very safe. One of the safest, easiest dragon laners to play, and that's why I've kept her in the S plus tier even after nerfs to her base attack damage. And again, once you get a few items, she'll still scale very, very well into the mid late game, and I still think she is very, very strong. Miss Fortune did receive a buff. For me, she stays in A plus tier. I don't think she's that strong. I did try out for a few games. I do have a Miss Fortune video coming out very, very soon. I did try Miss Fortune. I think she's okay. I think she's pretty decent. Her first ability going up in damage is actually very nice for the laning phase. Most of the time I go for like crit Miss Fortune, but you can probably go for like, Manami Miss Fortune if you want to. But again, another champion that is very, very strong. And the other one is an interesting one. As you can see, I've moved Senna up from C to B. The reason I've moved Senna up to C to B is because I've actually been playing, if you haven't seen on my YouTube, I've actually been playing some farming Senna. It's actually not that bad. I don't think it's great. I think support center is like 20 times better than ADC center or like farming center in a way. I don't think she's as bad to be like C tier. I think she can work, especially with the buff that she got now. She has an inbuilt soul on her first ability, which means you don't need to build Itemon Gauntlet. You don't need to build Serratus Grudge. That means it opens up more opportunities for you to build crit items on Senna. You can go for Manamune, Navori Quick Blades, Rune's Hurricane, Rapid Fire Cannon, and start to build crit. And that kind of helps you a little bit, because with farming center, you're not going to get as many souls as support center because you're going to be lost hitting minions. That means if you build crit items like Navori Quick Blades, you'll be able to kind of cut off or be able to make do with the souls that you're missing, because with every single soul, well, with like 10 souls, every 10 souls you get, you gain extra crit. You could just say, okay, instead of me getting souls, I'm just going to build damage instead, and I'm going to build crit items, so I'm still going to be at kind of the same power spike as I was before. You're not going to have as crazy range as you are with support center, because you're going to get a lot of souls, but still, she still does a lot of damage. She's still great. She's still more of a utility AD carry, though. She's not like a hyper carry. You know, she's not like a crazy hyper carry. But I moved her up. I gave her a little bit of love. And I gave her a little bit of love in the support tier list as well. Other than that, not really much else has changed. I still think Tristana is insanely strong. Same with Lucian. Same with Kai'Sa. These three AD carries are all insanely strong. Kai'Sa, I think, is probably one of the best ADCs at the moment, just because of how safe you can play in the laning phase if you want to. And, you know, once you get your Q evolved, you do insane single target damage. It's a great champion to play. All right, last but by no means least, let's look at the support tier list. Again, I'm going to quickly talk about Senna. I've moved Senna up into the S tier in support role. I think Senna is one of the best carry supports now, if not the best carry support now with Pyke in the support role. Her early game is so insane, and if you want more early game pressure with Senna, you can go for Kraken Slayer in support. You can see I got Kraken Slayer here. Support, I have Grasping Undying because you kind of want to be a little bit more of a tank. But if you want to go for more carry oriented Senna, then you can actually go for Kraken Slayer support Senna. This gives you a lot more early game pressure, and the great thing about Senna is that she's really, really good against enchanters, you know, like Karma, like Nami, like Lulu, because they want to walk up, they want to trade with you in the early game. If you have bone plating and then you also have your first ability, which not only deals damage but also heals you for a lot as well at the same time, you're pretty much going to win the trade. You just auto attack, Q auto attack, you proc Kraken Slayer, you proc the true damage, and you also heal yourself at the same time. So I think Senna is insanely strong in a support role. Definitely recommend to pick her up. Yuumi received a little bit of a nerf to her second ability, also her first ability, but I still think she's very, very strong. She still does a lot of poke damage. She still heals quite a lot. Ultimate is still very, very important as well, especially during team fights. And she is still, in my opinion, one of the strongest supports, and definitely a bannable support as well. Because if you have any good Yumis or any good other players with the Yuumi, then she can be quite difficult. And then Morgana's change is interesting. I kept her, I mean, I don't think she should be here. I think she should be up in A tier. I think I actually misplayed and put her in B tier by accident. I was meant to put her up into A tier. Yeah, she kind of stays in the A tier. I think she was in A tier before. I can't remember now. Maybe she was in B tier. Actually, maybe she was in B tier before. But again, Morgana support is like okay. She kind of got a buff with the changes to her third ability, which means you don't really need to go like full AP Morgana now. You can go for like more support items. But to be honest, there's not really any support items you can really go with Morgana. Morgana support, you can just go for like Rod of Ages, Rylai's, Liandry's, items like that. You can't really build support items on Morgana. You know, Staff of Flame with Water, items like this. It's like Black Shield is not meant to be used as a shield to give your allies buffs. It's used as a reactive shield to crowd control coming your way. Whether that's on your AD carry, whether that's on yourself, anything like that. So buying support items on Morgana kind of feels useless. But yeah, same two champions are still in the S plus tier. Karma, broken support, absolutely disgusting broken support at the moment. Used to build 4 AP and she's really, really strong. Nami as well, insane support, great playmaking potential. A few honorable mentions. Ashe support is still very, very good. If you want to play engaged supports, Nausus and Thresh is still insanely fun, especially with Rakan. Pyke is still really good as well. Again, your enchanters, Lulu, Janna, Yuumi, you know, they're still really strong as well. You got a couple of supports below that. But that's pretty much everything for the tier list. Pretty decent rundown of the tier list. Everything is pretty much all up to date on the website as well. So if you want to check out the website, Again, it's got ability breakdowns for every single champion in the game, and everything is all nice and dandy with that. But again, another tier list, another meta, what you can say, or even though it's like not really a change in meta every single time, but another meta in the game or another patch in the game where everything is pretty strong. You can go for multiple champions, everything is really strong. Everything can carry games, so hopefully you can enjoy the climb with whatever champion you pick to go for. As always, thank you very much for watching the video. I'll be bringing out more content over the next couple of days with some new buffs and some new changes. Also probably be doing a Zeri interactions video very soon as well. Keep an eye out for that. But as always, take care of yourselves, have a good rest of the day. I'll see you all in the next one video.